Good afternoon, Internet. Welcome back to Behind the Curve. We're pleased to have you back. My name is Andrew,
Matthew, here.
and we are here to discuss something mind-bending, world-altering, timelines full of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
I
Kids,
would whistle the X-Files theme right now, but I can't.
kids, it's time to talk about time travel, and more specifically, primer. Or primer, but probably primer. Take us away. Alright, so this is a micro budget movie made by man whose name just went straight out of my head.
Shane Carruth.
Shane Carruth, yes. So there's a micro budget movie made by Shane Carruth in sometime in the early 2000s.
Yeah, it was like shot in 2001, and then it didn't come out in 2004 because he did all the editing.
Yes, and it is a non-linear story of time travel and betrayal and lots of things. And this is a movie that has received a lot of critical attention, especially when it first came out. But it's kind of I don't know, maybe it has not quite. I would say that it has a cult.
Lost.
Somehow it has a cult following, I'd say.
Cult film makes me think it's like The Room, which came out the same year, but it's more like, go say an arrogant, like a Soviet art house film.
Because those exist. You all know how artsy the Soviets were. Yeah, actually they do exist. So tell us more about this movie, Matthew. You are something of an expert on this movie, or at least you know far more about it than I do.
Well, I think I liked it because it had a lot of authorship with it for Shane Carruth. That according to multiple sources, he wrote, directed, edited, acted, researched, and even composed the music for the film.
That's very impressive.
Like, you're familiar with like authorship and whatnot, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but like maybe you could explain a little bit more about what you mean by that for our listeners.
Well, he's shown himself to be very obsessed with control, I would say.
Yeah.
In his other filming projects, his second film, Upstream Color, I believe that was entirely self-funded.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why his one film that we were just looking at a couple weeks ago, Atopiary, the reason why that actually didn't get off because of a lot of his producers, which apparently was Steven Soderbergh and I think David Fincher, didn't give them his money the way he wanted to, and that was the big thing. But since he worked on so much of Primer, and it was a kind of movie you could do that, it wasn't too spectacular, that he got a lot of control. Like, he was also learning the ropes at the same time, but I think he did a wonderful job of doing all that.
Very nice. I mean, that is something that you talk about is creative people are very controlling when you try to make their visions a reality. I think that's understandable, and I kind of wonder why more people don't take more possession of their creative property in that way.
It's interesting. It's kind of like Stanley Kubrick and Terry Gilliam. It's like you want to make the movie like a novel because you just try to control what it says. You're like the author. That's what auteur means in French, from what I understand. It means author.
Well, yes. I mean, yes, of course. Because once you make something, you want to have possession of it. You want to direct it out fully. You want to have your full vision become a reality.
If you think about it, like for a film like this is the only way to consistently weave theme within the entire focus of the film.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I think that like a lot of art houses are auteur. Well, you basically are. You had to have an auteur art house film because if you're going to say something, you're going to say it consistently. You're going to say it well. You got to make sure that it's said throughout, and that means like you can't steer blinds, you can't improvise. You got to stick to the script. You got to make sure locations are secure, especially they have to do with the theme. It's very important.
So no ad-libbing would be part of it.
Well, I understand there really was none actually. There was like one scene in so it's not a Warholian Andy Warhol movie. You can't just make it up. Not document. It might be documentary style, but it's not a documentary.
Yeah, no, I hear that. I mean, yeah, no, that's one thing you always wonder is, you know, where does the creative liberty of an actor actually add to the story, or when does it detract from the story? Because it definitely can do both.
Well, I think with the it's funny that I think the biggest challenge was like maybe the acting for Carruth. It would have been for me because like to me the number one rule of writing characters is that characters aren't you, or if they are you, even then they're going to divert somehow. I mean, like you could be, I guess, semi-autobiographical, but like you know, just as forces that shaped yourself or any person for that matter, like that's going to be, especially if you're working with a speculative fiction creative world, you know.
I mean, every character that you write is in some way going to be you. I think that's unavoidable. There's always going to be some part of your characters that is you. However, you should not write characters that are all the same as you. I mean, I think, but you are always going to write characters that are in some way you.
But do you think that the writer should try to write against that as best as they can?
Not always. I mean, I think if it interferes with, with the story.
Not always, not as like a default mode, but like when they're trying to write.
Well, we're trying to write about different people here. They're trying to write somebody who isn't yourself, of course, but there's still going to be aspects of that person that are like you. I just think that's unavoidable. You know, speaking as an author, that every character you're going to see a glimmer of yourself in, because they all were generated from in you, from in your imagination, in your consciousness.
And tying this together, that we see that I feel like Carruth's experience as a mathematics major and as a software engineer for NASA, that he was able to combine, not because of narcissistic reasons, but because of experience reasons, to help write a movie like this more better. And the fact that he had interest in it, in this sort of subject, comes back to that he writes engineer characters who don't stop to explain things, that even when we don't know what's going on, we still know that something important is happening.
Yes, that is part of the script that I both admire and find incredibly frustrating, is that the two engineer characters, Aaron
and Abe, they want the names?
Yes, Aaron and Abe, they will just straight up technology, or they will use technical terms non-stop with no pause to explain. They just keep going right ahead with what they're saying. And
going into believability, realism, whatever you want to call it, it's kind of interesting. He not only captured that, but the personality types that would probably be involved with something like this if it were real.
Yeah, no, I think the personality types definitely fit. The personality types of Aaron and Abe, they fit each other well, and they fit the story well. Like, they make sense as the people in the story. Though the sort of the lack of outside characters is very interesting, because it's explained in the script.
It's for the cheapness, though, if you really think about it. So the film can remain cheap. But yeah, what were you gonna say?
I was saying that I just thought that was clever, because yes, it is because of the cheapness, but also because they somehow they did a good job of explaining it away inside the story.
Yeah, that's another thing about this skill. It's like Carruth's skill of keeping things on budget, but explaining the cheapness within the story.
Yeah. I have to admit, I was impressed by that, especially. I don't know if that means like I'm too minded about the money, but hey, it worked.
I mean, honestly, I could never write a film or do a film like he did. As much as he's my hero, as much as he's a little bit of my format for writing my film, even in ways that are kind of questionable why certain things have to be the way they are, but I just couldn't do what he did.
I think you could. I think you could.
I couldn't compose music.
Oh well, yeah. I mean, not all of us have that wide range of talents, but you know, it's all right. We can't all be Babe Ruth.
I think this is why I like this film so much. Is just it came from such a rare person. Like I really think he's a polymath. I mean, like, and not all polymaths apply themselves to film, which is really interesting to see. Like you get the sense that Carruth is a once in a generation filmmaker, and that has a lot to do with his very long times to make his films. Like first film was 2004, his second was 2013. A lot of that had to do with funding, but a lot of that had to do with writing the thing. So, like the perfectionism inherent within himself. And other than Jonathan Glazer, I really don't know of anyone who takes longer with their films and have it to pay off in such a way and show that they really worked for that.
Who's Jonathan Glazer, for people who might not know?
Probably not going to know him. Made a movie called Sexy Beast with the one Indian guy in it, with the bald Indian guy. Played a gangster.
Gandhi?
The Gandhi actor.
Oh, him?
Yeah.
Oh, not ringing any bells. So what's the movie about?
It's about like a drug gangster guy, and I forget what else. Another one movie is called Birth. He only made 3 movies. Like I said, about reincarnation. It had Nicole Kidman in it. It took place in New York City. Supposedly her reincarnated husband comes to see her in the form of an 8-year-old. Last one was very heavily lauded. It's called Under the Skin. It had Scarlett Johansson in it, and it was based off of a novel by the guy who wrote the book of Strange New Things. And it was kind of about a woman who steals the bodies of men throughout Scotland. Definitely an art house film.
Huh. Interesting. And how long does it take him to make movies usually?
Let's see, his movies came out 2000, 2004, 2013, and his latest one is going to be coming out in 2020. It's about the Holocaust in Poland.
Yikes. That's a big gap. Those are big gaps.
Shane Carruth has had an average of 9 years so far, so that means his next film will come out in 2022, which sounds about right with what's been happening lately in his life. Sad.
Okay, thank you. All right, so now let's dive into the movie a little bit.
Okay.
All right, so we already kind of talked about what appeals to you about this movie. We're talking about the appeal of this movie. And we've talked about sort of the mechanics of, like...
Super briefly.
Yeah. What do you think about the story in general? Like what is your opinion on the story? The story itself, the emotional weight of the story, how it's told?
Well, one of the things that impresses me whenever a science fiction writer gets the social aspect of a film well, not just the science part. So you got to see like the personality type of the unsocial engineer, but you probably don't see this in Carruth as much as he comes across as a bit cold to me through the interviews. But for Carruth, I think that as much as he made a great story about time travel, he made a great story about 2 friends who, from their discovery, did really dumb things and had their relationship broke apart. That's as much as an element of the story as the time travel aspect, just as much as in Interstellar there's a story about going across other galaxies, as well as there's a story about a relationship between a father and a daughter.
Interesting. The thing that I took away from the story is I definitely found it very academically interesting. I had a very hard time, I'd say, investing emotionally in the story. I don't ever think I honestly did invest emotionally in the story. I did definitely invest academically in the story.
Do you think that can be properly excused, or that's never excusable? Because it sounds like you're saying that's never excusable.
Never excusable that I didn't invest?
Well, you think it was a flaw in yourself, or was it a flaw in the story? Let's start with that.
I'm not necessarily sure it was a flaw in either, because I don't think it's meant to be an emotional story.
Okay, fair.
There's
Are you
very
excusing it because of that? That's fair. It's like an intellect. That's I can see
yeah
that. Yeah.
there's very little expressed emotion from any of the characters. I mean, outside of maybe, but no, there is a level of emotional involvement that I think is you said because the characters' frustrations. That's basically the emotion we see from them is frustration followed by exasperation followed by betrayal followed by frustration. I think that's sort of the emotional cycle of the movie, and I think that is something that I think the audience will mirror in their attempt to understand the plot without the proper guide to the plot. Because and here's the thing: is there's no way to get around the fact that the movie needs a primo walkthrough guide from the 2000s to get through it. It really does. Like you need a who's the lady who made the plot walkthrough, the really good one.
The lady who made a video username was London City Girl.
Yes. So if for those of you who watch Primer and then watch her video, and then it'll like actually make sense. Which is, I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know how I feel about having to watch another video to make sure the movie makes sense. Like, to actually make sure of a linear, like, of the... I don't know.
Usually I'm like, well, you know, things like this, shouldn't need homework. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But, like, this is almost where it's necessary because, like, I think that there should be stuff for smarter people. And that means that there's going to be some things that people don't get. The question is if it's complexity for complexity's sake, but I think it isn't because it's like this thing would actually, from what I understand, something like this would actually exist if it existed, which is kind of the pull of the movie, which I have a lot of notes on.
It's necessary. Yeah, no. I mean, it makes sense that the plot structure is non-linear. I mean,
to me, it's kind of I don't understand why it is, but I feel like it makes the film unnecessarily complicated. It feels like Carruth's just flexing his muscles for the sake of flexing his muscles. For that aspect.
Yeah, no, there were definitely times when I felt like even when London City Girl was explaining it, I still have no idea how she had enough information to construct as much as she did. Because it was
in interviews, and I'm sure she watched it more.
Yeah, interviews, watched it several times. I do agree with you. There should be a time. There should be definitely complex plots or fine complex plots should be a thing. There should be movies and such that appeal to our better senses, that appeal to our higher intellectual parts. I definitely agree with that. But there are parts where you wonder, is the actual complexity getting in the way of trying to make a story? And that is my only concern with Primer, because I'm not sure, or excuse me, Primer, which is apparently we've decided that Primer is the proper pronunciation.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm not convinced the absolute non-linearity. Okay, close enough. Of the story helps the story, and I'm not even sure it helps tell the story its non-linear narrative, because ultimately the narrative is linear. It's just broken up strangely.
I mean, at a certain point, it would have to be non-linear to a certain extent because you have the clones running around. But to me, that's a kind of a different thing.
Yeah, it's more like I don't even know. It's odd. It's odd. And I think,
it doesn't strike me as necessary.
It's almost I would even argue it's possibly intentionally misleading, because it's almost like it tries to get you to think one thing. And then, at least parts would be like there'd be like a jump cut between like two things that aren't happening, at the same time, and it's like, I don't know. So there were parts of the movie where, like, as much as I enjoyed it, because I did legitimately enjoy the movie.
I just thought of one possible way of having it work is that it kind of hides the twist of who is a clone and who's an original. But other than that, yeah, it is a bit. That's the only thing it could really help. But then the question is the twist necessary, and that's it's debatable.
Because I'm not sure that's the main twist. I'm not sure that's the plot twist, but it is a good twist. You're right. The fact that there is a question of, like, when I think it's the two Aarons, when the two Aarons are fighting in the kitchen.
Well, they both got locked away at a certain point. I think Shane Carruth's character got locked in the attic, and I think the original got locked in the attic. And when you see Shane Carruth on the bench with the earpiece, that's basically his clone, and he's manipulating stuff so he can like reset things further or something.
Yeah. And it's like the it's very interesting to see sort of the web of trust unravel, because you see it's the panic button. Everybody has a panic button. Everybody wants a panic button. Panic buttons for all.
The panic button in the form of the second time machine, really.
Yes.
Which I really didn't get on the first viewing. I think I might have actually gone without the video. I might have figured out because they don't call it the second time machine. They call it the something device, like I forget, but they don't call it that.
Failsafe?
The failsafe device,
yes.
Yeah. Failsafe. They could call it second time machine, but again, that's the realism of the dialogue. It's what people would actually call it on the seat of their pants.
Yeah. Actually, I think I would have figured that one out too, because there was one point where I said, "Wait a minute, they're in a different storage unit." The one time I was like, "Wait a minute, these are different."
Yeah.
So I figured. So my gut reaction was like, "Oh, they're building more, or do they need to move because they're afraid of meeting their doubles in the other room?" And then it's like, "Oh, it's probably a third machine."
There's also the subplot with their neighbor Granger supposedly somehow discovered one of the time machines.
It's like their neighbor, father-in-law, investor, drunk guy, raccoon man. I don't even know.
It's Dallas people.
It's Dallas people. Yes, and for the record, when they were wandering around the fountains looking for Granger, I thought they were looking for the cat.
A cat called Granger, yeah.
Like, oh, that's weird. What a weird place to look for a cat. Yeah, it's an experience. Anybody who hasn't seen it, you guys should probably watch it. It's
even if you hate it, it's fun to well, not fun, but to me it was. I don't know.
It's uncomfortable to watch, but it's rewarding to watch. There's something really uncomfortable about it. Did you notice that too?
Yeah, I'll get to that later.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
But what did you want to talk about first?
I wanted to actually talk about the believability, realism, whatever you want to call it, of this whole film.
Go for it.
You know that one of the big things that I talk about that probably most people acknowledge it, but I probably focus on them more than most people. Maybe the fact that my father is an English major. I'm surprised you didn't focus more on it. We actually started watching the film because my film, I'm trying to match the sort of dialogue style that Carruth uses in Primer and his other films.
After I read your movie upside down.
Yes.
Keep going.
That, like, his dialogue style, like, it actually it's not like a movie. Like, you're watching a movie. Like, it's like not how we were talking now, but like how we'd be talking to each other casually. And it's done so well that it makes me embarrassed that no other filmmaker has really tried to write films like this before. No one has even attempted it, I feel. And it's kind of almost wimpy. It's like, why can't all films be this good? Like, what's your whole opinion of this? Because the characters trail off, they go off topic, they stutter and populate their speech with verbal filler words. You think it works, or it's kind of weird, or what?
It is weird to see in a movie. I do think it works. It works for this movie. I think it makes sense. I mean, it is interesting to see somebody copy casual dialogue so closely. I mean, it does feel
It's
very
definitely a
realistic.
skill. Like I've been trying to do
Yeah.
it, and I'm getting there, but I'm not quite there yet.
Yeah, and,
You can't just do it. You can't just pick up and do it.
no, you can't, and that's something that I agree. I think it's definitely a specific challenge. It's something that I don't know. It's something that I think translates better into movie form than it would into written form. I'm definitely gonna go with you. I'm definitely gonna go with that as saying it probably doesn't translate well as written. Um, I mean, as a writer, my first thought is that it's not a very efficient way to move the plot or to move characters. But then again,
He does jump around a lot, so you get the information that you need.
yeah,
Like the beginning part where they're talking about building whatever they're trying to build, like the gravity messing around her.
yeah. I mean,
Before.
he does have the advantage of the visual medium. So what I would say is that I think it can work. I think it's a stylistic choice. I think you have, there are a couple different styles when it comes to writing dialogue. I'm thinking of three primarily. There's one where it's sort of extreme non-realistic. I think we see this in books that happen, earlier, probably around, I'd say maybe like Shakespeare through the mid to early 20th century. That whole sort of, we didn't see realistic dialogue. We saw heightened dialogue. We saw beautiful dialogue. It was focused with being beautiful versus being realistic. It was focused with conveying ideas and conveying parts of the person, so you can make assumptions about the person, and you could show their assumptions about the world. It was almost like you're carrying your ideas through literature or through speaking. You're showing a portrait in dialogue. Now you are kind of at the. Then you sort of reach a midpoint where there's semi-realistic dialogue. I think that's sort of a latter half of the 20th century. Like, some people will work ums and well and dots and they'll go off topic in the middle.
Yeah, I mean, like it's sort of like used to spotlight certain things, but what I'm thinking was a big probably development for this was the rise of the method actors in the second half of the 20th century with Marlon Brando and Jack Nicholson. Like, you probably couldn't. I mean, I'm not saying that like Carruth necessarily got it from them directly, but he definitely was definitely influenced by that. I think to a certain extent, even if he doesn't know it.
Yeah, it definitely could be that. I mean, method acting, method writing. I mean, method writing is something that writers do. You talk out a scene. You talk out a scene as you write it. You yell out a scene as you're writing it. It happens. It happens to all of us. I do it definitely. I tend to fall into
The idea was authenticness for both ideas. Like, you listen to William Shatner, like he got carried over. People think like, oh, method acting, everyone accepted it, but no, like look at William Shatner. It's like we laugh at him now, but that was actually blasé. That was kind of the standard for acting because nobody thought it was weird. Because Shatner was a Shakespeare actor. You didn't need genuine emotion. You just had to like get all melodramatic for the soliloquies and stuff.
I mean, stage acting is. Anytime you have stage acting to screen acting, stage acting is always going to be more exaggerated because it needs
Shatner's
to be.
Kind of an extreme example, anyway.
I mean, yes, but William Shatner isn't exactly. I mean, he's not exactly a subdued performance there. And then finally, I'd say you have the hyper-realistic dialogue. It's something that people have tried to put into literature. Mixed results. People have tried to put it into film. Better results. I tend to like a blending of the two because I feel like that's... Because I feel like the more elegant is suited better to the written form, but you also need to include the fact that characters are going to stutter. They're going to say wrong things. They're going to cut each other off, but you're also trying to suggest character the whole time. And, having a speech like this, having me talking like this, while my hand is circling in the air, having me sort of grasp for words and stop, that doesn't necessarily translate into the written form. So I think it's ultimately why it's a style that you're only ever going to see truly work with movies. But I do think bringing dialogue down to earth a little bit is something that ultimately makes dialogue more accessible. Though, interestingly enough, it's interesting that the dialogue is so accessible in an incredibly, I wouldn't say incredibly, but a fairly unaccessible movie, just based on price, distribution, availability, topic matter.
But, I will get into that later, but I think that, like, it's probably more accessible than you think, because I think the person who did this actually well in books, and again might have influenced Carruth, was Mark Twain.
Oh, yeah, no, you're not wrong.
Like, I think he would actually be an example of realistic dialogue within a novel.
It's true, and even he would try to copy dialect, which is
It'd be like phonetic, like like accent, like maybe like Uncle Tom's Cabin. Use another Southern example.
See, that's actually a book I haven't read, but I have read Mark Twain.
But you know what I'm saying, right?
I think I know what you're getting at. Yes. I have read multiple Mark Twain books. Yeah, the frog of what the something frog of something county.
The jumping frog of Holliver's County.
Yes, thank you. That's the one. That's the one that immediately popped into my head.
I think this is an English major thing. I never really was an English major. My father is, but
yeah.
Just like caring about words, caring about dialogue. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's English major. Still one of the best exercises for writing we ever did was sat in the cafeteria for an hour and a half and wrote stuff about the people next to us.
There you go.
It's it was interesting. I wrote some interesting stuff.
But to kind of like pull us back together,
yes.
Tying this all up is that I think all these elements have to do with what makes Primer great. It's the believability of it all. I think Carruth's like mentality for this was that the dialogue should be as real as the science involved. Like he kind of almost shot between like a found footage film and like an amateur indie film.
Yes.
I mean, obviously he had limited resources, but I think he didn't just like put that together because he had to. Again, he's using the sort of inherent cheapness of the film to draw in the themes of every single aspect of the filmmaking process.
That makes sense. No, I would agree with that.
Like I don't know if you caught on to this, but it's kind of almost like you're spying upon these men, what they're doing.
There are definitely a couple angles that there are definitely some shots that feel off, as in like almost I hate to use the word, but like voyeuristic almost, just like you're peeping, you're being a peeping Tom. You're someplace you don't belong. Like I thought that was like actually pretty early in the film, like when you're getting the split dining room scene.
Yeah.
It's like, why are you? Or even like the backyard scenes when they're in the backyard, or even in the car. It was just like there's inherently uncomfortable scenes where it's like, I'm not supposed to be here.
Like almost you would say like a natural way of doing things. Not like it's off, but like it's like the sort of wrongness of the thing.
Yeah, it's like intentionally off is what like yeah. Or even like there's so many shots of like outside looking in, like from the garage, from the house, from the kitchen. Yeah, there's a lot of those shots which I think help establish that. And also I'd say the frequent use of like outdated lighting. Like older light fixtures, older lighting, like fluorescents.
Yeah, that was definitely a thing. I don't know what he was saying with that. Maybe it just was purely necessary, but I'm not quite sure.
It could have been. And also the fact that there are so many stationary cameras. There's very few moving camera shots. Almost everything is stationary camera with a moving scene.
But another thing that I noticed was that's actually the science. According to Carruth, there's actually not a lot of science with the time travel itself, like how it would be discovered.
Mm-hmm.
Like according to him, that a lot of the things like with the discovery part has to do with like how they would discover it. Like the film's tagline is "What if it actually works?" Not "How does it work?" Which I don't feel would be appropriate for a story.
Yes, I agree.
I mean, apparently it does have it has to do with more of the theme of that he found in reading books about the history of science, of how a lot of discoveries in science are usually accidental, and then how byproduct of a discovery usually was the main thing that made the inventors famous.
Yes.
And so according to him, look at my notes. That he did his film, for example, features superconductors that get used to degrade gravity, and apparently you had to kind of just convince yourself that they are powerful enough to degrade time, which is the whole idea. He actually said the farther he went into time travel, looked into time travel for the past, he said that kind of like Interstellar, that only basically information could be sent back in time.
Yeah.
But coming back, one of the things he said that the film does explore is what's called Feynman dynamics and non-linear dynamics. I assume you don't know what that is, right?
I don't know. I don't know what the first one is. I think I have an idea of what the second one is, but I'd be interested to hear what both of them are.
Yeah, interesting. Like Carruth said that one of his biggest, I don't know if the word is obsession, but one of his biggest interests is nonlinear dynamics, and he was a mathematics major, so he knows like how this all would work.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how they work, but Feynman apparently was a guy who tried to work out what would happen if time travel was real, which inspired like how time travel works. Like, it was basically a way for Carruth to work out paradoxes would work in real life, like that the paradox create recursions, and that's why Aaron and Abe basically create clones of themselves.
Okay, so by recursions, it'd be they're coming back to the same place again as different versions of themselves.
Yes.
Okay.
So he's not making things up. This is real science, including, again, part of the discovery of the time travel, but not much. So that's why I like this film so much, that even though it kind of lacks some science in the discovery of time travel, that it's still not a pulpy space opera film like Star Wars, even a sci-fi that acts as a kind of philosophical allegory like The Matrix. Like, it's a real science speculative film like Interstellar, even if it's as story as scientific as Interstellar. It's really science fiction, which you don't see, which is one of the reasons I don't think it could have been a Hollywood film, because they would have never like funded this.
Yeah, that makes sense. Guys, I want funding for a non-linear movie where nobody speaks normal dialogue and nobody in it is a recognizable actor. Yeah, no,
that'll go through.
That's not going up the flagpole. So what did you have something else to add to that?
I just kind of sad. I was just gonna say that it's sad that films like this can't exist. Like, that people are too dumb. I mean, like, I'm too dumb too, but like, I understand that it works.
Yeah.
I do know, and like, I know that I don't have to understand to like it.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, yeah,
Because if it's real, that means it could exist one day, and that really pumps me up. So.
And that's exciting. I mean, I'm not necessarily thrilled about the imminent arrival of time travel, but it does. A movie like this can be made. And it can be made by a talented and enterprising individual, and I think that if we have more talented and enterprising individuals with more interest in things of this nature, we could continue to see movies like this, to grow movies like this, to grow in genre movies that are more specialized and more micro budget on a personal level. Obviously, you need like the right social and right economic conditions for that sort of thing to happen. And
well, I want to get your opinion on this.
Sure.
Another thing that I don't think really was realistic was how unethical Aaron and Abe were. Like, again, if they're so smart, why couldn't they think of certain things and decide not to do that? But at the same time, there would be no movie this happens. So you think this works? Because this is the least believable element of the whole thing for me.
Interesting. I think it's a really interesting idea, this least believable part for you, because I do agree. It's sort of like, if they are so smart, why are they being so incredibly dumb? I think part of that could be that, sometimes smart people, don't have... that is kind of, I know that's kind of a bias, but like the conversation, like, oh, really smart people don't have a lot of common sense sometimes. I've heard people say that, but I've also I think the thing about it is
it's not like an absent-minded professor thing. It's like a Nazi doctor, almost like. I don't know.
I don't know.
You're not the
I
best
feel like we jumped several rails there. No.
Never mind.
Yeah, no. I would go with more. No, I think because I don't necessarily think that's a great idea. I think I don't remember if it was from the London City Girl video, but it's sort of like the idea that they're smart, but they have no idea what they're dealing with. They're like two kids playing with something. They don't really get it. They don't really get what they're using. So I think I might go with that one.
Fair. So what I once heard you say that I don't know. I actually might have been from bringing this up, but you once said that time travel fiction never impressed you because all it was just changing things of the past and finding things in the future had changed. So has this film changed your mind, or you're just still unimpressed?
I mean, it certainly changed my mind of what a time travel movie can be. To me, it's the one that has felt the most realistic, the most believable of any of the time travel movies that I've seen. But it still doesn't make me think like, oh my goodness, time travel is an amazing concept that I would like to write a story about, or like whatever. Because the problem with time travel movies is you're always going to plow into a logic wall. You're always gonna plow into some sort of wall, I think, and I just. And also, like, the whole, like, jumbled up timelines and intersecting things, it's like, I don't know, that just never super, interested me. I've always been more interested in having a story take place across a time that we understand and can relate to. But...
And for me, it's like, if that's what time travel is, and that's the only thing it can be, it's like, well, you milked all the themes out of that one. I don't think you can make another time travel film anymore. Like, all the stuff you could possibly talk about has been talked about.
Well.
Unless it's some pulpy thing like Avengers Endgame, where it's like the time travel is clearly fake and it's just like a plot mover. But I'm not talking about that.
Yeah, like, see, like, is that time travel, like, I always heard this, like, things like, what can we do? Time travel! I'm just like, nope, there goes
all of a sudden, everything in the film universe did not make sense anymore.
Circling the drain. Alright, yeah, no, that's it. That's interesting. Is there anything else that you think we should talk about?
Well, final verdict. Did you like Primer?
Yes, I did. I ultimately did.
I changed your mind about if time travel with it or not. Well, you liked it.
You loved it. I did like the movie. I'm not sure to say I loved it because I did definitely feel confused, and even I would say frustrated at times. But I did enjoy it. It was a good story.
Okay, so this is the last thing, but
yes.
Did you and you might have to really think about for this or no? Do you think that the film is possibly postmodern? I can explain why I think this, but
bleep, bleep, bleep. Because you're forced to move past. Because you're forced to move past the subjective into something more objective.
Well, yeah, there's definitely some objective science that goes beyond them.
Yes. I'm curious. I'll bite. Why do you think it is?
Well, it's possibly metamodernist because I felt like maybe it was neo-romantic in a way that there's these men who mess around with nature. They don't know what they're doing, so they get nature's horns, so to speak.
Interesting.
You're talking about the wrongness of the camera angles, the kind of like childlike ignorance that these grown men who have these master's degrees in engineering or whatever, and yet when they go to mess around with nature, all they get is pain. They deconstruct the forbidden, in other words.
Interesting.
I kind of see like my relation with my film now.
I'm not necessarily sure. I do see that. I do see that. That makes sense. I could go along with that. It's romantic in theme, not necessarily in function, but in theme. I don't disagree. No, I don't disagree at all.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, if you watch other films like Upstream Color, which is... I'm kind of divided by that film. It does kind of feel postmodern in a way, but it's definitely new romantic, because throughout that movie, the movie heavily features quotes from the book Walden by Henry Thoreau, as well as in its plot. So, kind of seeing the theme, because filmmakers and artists, they usually like try to have themes throughout their canon, if you will. So, I kind of saw like this regard for nature and a respect for the way things are in a certain way. Did you feel that?
Indirectly, yes. Nature is a force. It's not necessarily a theme, but it is a force. It's a force. It's an unseen force acting on everything in the movie.
And it's kind of the thing in a topiary, if you remember watching that video.
I don't remember watching the whole thing. I don't remember a whole ton about a topiary, but unmade movie. But yeah, I do remember. Yes. I do remember some of it. Yes. Long script.
It's kind of transcendentalist too. Transcendentalist.
Yeah. The Existentialist Club voted me most likely to be.
Oh.
Oh dear. All right. So
I think it's Q&A time.
I'm ready for that. Are you ready?
Yes.
All right. Want me to lead off?
Sure.
Okay. So I said, why do you think time travel has endured so prevalently as a concept? Like, it's been a very prevalent concept. Why do you think it's endured? Because I have a pessimistic idea and another idea.
I think only because I think I'm with you. I think my positive idea is that, like, because so much was discovered in the 20th century that made people wonder that possibly if, like, casual A to B point triangle is going to be, like, invented tomorrow, so since may consider Albert Einstein the greatest person of the 20th century, and that's all he was known for, even though he talked much more than that. And the second one, the pessimistic one, is just, it's so full of plot conveniences that how can you not use it? You know? Making a pulp staple like robots. But again, just like robots and time travel, space travel, they can all be used in a deep way, but usually aren't.
I hear that. I definitely hear that. Alright, go for it.
Okay, what is the telos of fantasy?
Oh man, this should be its own video.
Actually, it should be.
This should be its own video. Alright. I'm gonna say the telos of fantasy. The telos of fantasy is the. Oh, I think it's going to be the. I'm gonna go with the ultimate creative outworking of the soul. The ultimate, the longing is I think constructing a true fantasy, I think, is both selfishly and non-selfishly the closest that a human ever gets to playing God. I think that's why.
So pretty broad there.
That is pretty broad, and that's why it needs to be its own episode. I'm sorry, I can't necessarily do better than that at the moment. I'm gonna run with that. I have to go with the ultimate creative outpouring of the soul, the way that you want the ultimate non-escapist escape. Here's actually a very topical question for you. Is Primer the best micro-budget movie? In your opinion, is the best micro-budget movie that you've ever seen?
Possibly. I can't really think of any better. Maybe like from a non-artistic way, like Breathless, the 1960 film, might be the closest that they came to it. I'm not quite sure about that though, because it was more historically good than anything. So it depends.
Okay. Understandable.
And my last question is, what would be a media franchise you'd like to write for? So whether it be a TV episode, novel, screenplay, whatever.
What's a media franchise I would like to write for? So I assume this.
By the way, that doesn't mean medium. That means media franchise like Final Fantasy or Star Wars.
Okay, so I'm gonna cross a couple off the list of okay, so I'm assuming still active media franchises would be.
Actually, no. Let's put everything on the board.
Okay, let's put everything on the board here. I can think of, like, right off the bat, I can think of one. This is harder than I thought it would be. I'll let you know, there are some front runners. Like, if it was a book, so it could be a book franchise that I would,
It can include that.
Okay,
It could be
okay, so if it was a book franchise that I would have to be a part of, or, so I'd stick out there, the X-Files. I think I could
be like a spin-off novel or something?
I would throw that out there as a TV episode. I would like to write a TV episode for the X-Files. I might throw out there if I was going to write a book or do an adaptation of any kind. I might try to adapt Redwall or some of the Redwall saga into something. I think there's a book series that I think actually could have deserved a video game but never got one. Any other franchise that I'd like to write for? I would not mind writing. I would not mind, actually, oddly enough, writing for Pokemon. Try to save the series. Like, yeah, but not save the series. But what I'm saying is, basically, there should be a daytime Pokemon and a Pokemon at night. Have the daytime one for the kids. Have the nighttime one for all your adult fans, which is where you like, because you're making money for both.
I like that. Maybe like more character based.
Yeah, no, have an entirely different story. Have an entirely more fleshed out world, because there's so many interesting world building opportunities that they have sparked and then just ignored. They have not managed their world well. No, like, which surprises me for Nintendo, for how carefully Nintendo curates things.
Oh yeah.
They have not done a great job with Pokemon, I don't think, and there's so much potential for it. So those are my three. Those are my three right there.
Got it.
Alrighty. Well, this will bring us to the end of our discussion on primer, or premiere if you can't spell. But thank you for listening. Please drop a subscribe, drop a comment. We're hopefully over the summer we're going to take some time to actually get our maybe up our content a little bit. Maybe make things a little bit nicer on here. So if you have any suggestions, please let us know about sung by no, I'm kidding. But no, please, if you have any good ideas for good resources that we can use, drop something in the comments. Hope you were interested. Hope you like our content. Please don't be afraid to comment. We like those. Alright, we'll see you guys later. Have a great afternoon. Have a wonderful summer. I hope you had a happy 4th of July. If you're not from America, then I still hope you had a happy 4th of July. Alright, bye now.